Good morning. Welcome back to Morning at NTV. My name is Malaki Villaudera, and today, just like last week, we are big on the arts industry. And today, we'll be talking about how to revolutionize the poetry space. What can be done? Many say that it's still a young industry, it's still a young sector trying to, grow and better up. But what can be done moving forward to just ensure that poets in the country earn a decent living that can sustain them on a day-to-day basis? So in studios to talk about that and so much more is Mr. Philip Matogo, who has been a poet for over 10 years from the Poetry All Stars. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have Joanna Atege. I hope I got that right.
Atenge, yeah.
Yes, Atenge.
Yeah.
From Poetry All Stars. You're also a poet. You've been there for 2 years.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the poetry space in Uganda. You have been a poet for over 10 years now.
Yeah.
What can you say has been the major challenge for the poets in Uganda? Because you're telling me it's so hard for someone to stand out and say, I'm a poet and I live solely by that. What's happening?
Okay, the first challenge I would say is recognition. Recognition of a poet as an artist in his own right, or in her own right, who can drive forward movement towards realization of benefits for all the people involved, the poets. Secondly, the perception of the public. Many of the people don't understand what poetry is. They actually think that poetry is kind of like this thing for highly sophisticated individuals whose heads are in the clouds. Yet poetry is more than that. Poetry is a form of outreach. Poetry is a form of communication. Poetry is actually life. And one professor once said, poetry is words on the verge of song.
Right, right. But why do you think we're having that, especially on the perception front? And I mean, we've lived with poetry from time immemorial.
Yeah.
I mean, our grandparents used to, sit us down on a bonfire, tell us stories. You're getting my point. So what has made it different now? What do you think, being there for 2 years now, what do you think the perception is down?
What has made it good currently is, here's the thing. You see, when you, when you perform more, let me say, that's when people can appreciate you, and that's when people will call you. That's when Philip will come and be like, hello, very bad. But if I'm a poet that writes and just keeps my poetry back in my books, they'll be like, they won't recognize you, yeah?
So it's because many poets are not standing out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, but with the art of spoken word poetry basically is poetry where, I write a poem that you can relate to, like we bring it down to the people. So with such poetry, it actually stands out, yeah? Poetry stands out with spoken word, yeah.
You, as Poetry All Stars, you actually started, you came together, a group of 7 members, to just make sure that this space is transformed.
Yeah.
What is your key agenda and what is your first strategy just to help change that perception?
Okay, the first strategy, our agenda, is to make poetry mainstream, As she said, poetry should stand out, stand out in its own right. So one of the methods we're using is trying to make sure poets break out of their comfort zones and, and start coming face to, let's say toe-to-toe, going toe-to-toe with other artists, like comedians, like musicians.
Rappers.
Rappers, everyone,
Collaborations.
But, not only collaborations, but also inspiration in the sense that we bring something special and unique to the table that is recognized as something which they can do, use as a staple for their entertainment, because right now all we have is we have a narrow entertainment firmament in the sense that we only have comedy, we have music, but where is the inspiration, which is poetry? That's what poetry is about. You're going to hear her perform that. And then secondly, would like this is the reason I'm dressed like a student, right?
Exactly, because you walked in and I was like,
I'm not exactly a student, right? Right?
What happened? Have you gone back to primary school at your age?
I was like,
Yeah,
because I could be that one of those slow kids who stay in school all his life, but I'm not one of those kids. But so what we did, like with poetry, we have these books, songs. They're called Songs of Chiguli. And there are several. These are, I only have 2 here, but there are 4. and they even can be found online, Amazon and all that. But poetry here, we used it as a form of outreach. We got rural children to write about rural experiences, all kinds, a whole plethora of that. Then after that, we got a publishing firm called PDMI in the USA, and they published all their poems. This particular book, this particular anthology, is actually published alongside American poets. That's why you can see the American flags. Yeah. So the one school, this is Robinson Middle School, and this is Chuguli Army Primary School.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are just kids of 12, 11 coming together from across, you know, different experiences.
Why primary school? Is it also that you just want to make sure that you calculate that kind of, you know, practice from earlier on as they grow up, so that they can appreciate poetry? What exactly is it? Why primary school and not kindergarten?
Yeah, primary is, oh yeah, kindergarten's there, yeah. But I don't know if those kids will understand me.
They could. I remember when I was in kindergarten,
yeah.
Poetry was big.
Really?
It was big, yeah. Back then in my days, it was big. I don't know why you are still, you know, thinking that kindergarten students cannot get it.
The truth is I went to a kindergarten, not on the issue of poetry. I knew the kids just wanted to play, so I was wondering when we would get down to the real stuff. So I didn't see her, but
my daughter is in a storytelling class, and I'm thinking if they can get them to just, you know, do poetry as well, they will understand it. Because if a 3-year-old, 4-year-old can sit down and comprehend a story, then they can also, you know, understand poetry as well. Well, my take. You can think about it.
Something to learn, because I hope all the kids out there don't hate me for saying that they're unserious, you know, like that guy. But you're right. But we went to primary school because primary school is the seed bed. We thought we could grow it out of primary school and then take it to secondary. Actually, there are poets who are taking things. I think you do.
Kitara Nation is doing school tours. We have been to Gulu. We have been around Kampala schools. We're soon going to Mbale. I think next month in August, we're going to do a poetry outreach. I think about 6 schools.
So when you do a poetry outreach, what essentially does that entail? When you get to a school, what then?
We get to a school, we introduce them to the idea of poetry. We tell them poetry is not basically supposed to exist in a book. You can speak it out, and we call this spoken word poetry, yeah? And after that, we engage them, we show them, then we tell them to write. Then those that find it hard to write a poem, we tell them, let's write a collective poem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the way you're seated, yeah? Let's write a poem. And then just write what you think. That's what we tell them, because poetry comes from within. You don't have to think hard. I don't wake up and be like, okay, I must write. No, I wake up and then I think of what is on my head, and then I just put it down. I'll just develop the idea later. So if you have an idea, here's an idea, yeah? So they get interested.
Anyone can be a poet.
Yeah, you're also a poet.
Actually, you know they said poetry is everywhere. All it needs is editing.
Editing.
Because you know because poetry, you know, and some people even say, don't write poetry, be a poem. In the sense, like with you, you're an attractive lady. Many people call you a poem. In the sense, you know what I mean? So that's it.
So everything that you see has a story to it. Okay, let's talk about, okay, fine, you said anyone can write poetry, anyone can do poetry. But especially when you're saying the editing now plays a big role, what do you look at when you're forming a sentence, a poetry sentence? What are those, you know, kind of snippets that someone shouldn't miss out on? Because when you guys are doing your spoken word, I'm like, what have you just said?
Okay, she can speak about spoken word. I'll do the written
part. Written word.
What? Pardon?
So when you're doing your piece, especially when you're preparing a piece for spoken word, and of course you first write before you recite it. So when you're writing it down, what are those kind of facets that you look into to ensure that your sentences make sense?
Okay. You see, with spoken word, I'm going to recite it to the people. So when I'm writing, I'm looking at, if I put this line, will they understand? Will they relate? Yeah. So when I'm editing it, I want to put things that people can relate with. They may not be perfect. I can actually use broken English. They'll get it. Okay, they'll laugh, but they'll get it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and in written?
Yeah, written is a little more structured. in the sense that we have various formats. We have sonnets, which are 14-line poems, going by iambic pentameters, where you look at the beats, you know, according, it's quite technical, right? Then you have villanelles, different types. You have haiku. Here, in this particular book, the American kids like using haikus, which is like 17-syllable poems with 3 lines, and the Ugandan kids like free verse. So, as she said, you know, free verse is more. It's, by the way, free verse is a recent phenomenon. It came with Whitman, like 100 years ago. So plus, and it, you know, it came to kind of liberate the poet, as she talked about, in an expression.
Right.
Yeah, because all these, you know, when we're writing poetry, like myself, you have to adhere to so many things: sentence structure, length of sentence,
exactly,
commas.
Yeah.
You know, you make one mistake, you know, as they said,
you've messed up the meaning. Yes.
Yeah, they say a poet can survive anything but a misprint.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just for us to know what poetry is all about.
Yeah.
Joanna will perform something, and your stage name is
Marybird, yes.
All right. Okay,
it's my name as well, but
it is.
Yeah. It's, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to do a political poem.
Okay.
Called "My Country Is a Lot Like My Mother," where I contrast my country and my mother, but I love both of them.
You wrote it yourself?
Yes, I did.
What inspired it?
I was going for a poetry slam, Ladu, her edition, and I was on pressure, and my mother had angered me, and I'm like, wait, you're stressing me like this country stresses our people, you know? Yeah, so I wrote it down, and yeah.
All right.
Let me stand because I prefer to.
Okay.
See, my country is a lot like my mother. See, she does not care. She will treat you like a beneficiary you are to her and continue to enforce her demands in your life like an African father she is not. See, my mother checks on me like the checks and balance system of this country that has failed to regulate the arms of government 5 times a day with godly messages and several pieces of advice, reminding me of the sensitization goals of this country that show the presence of a little democracy. See, like the people of this country, my mother makes noise about matters whose genesis she does not know, just so you can hear her voice. See, she's like the ruling party, silent and comfortable, but her anger is a reverse earthquake pulling 7 continents together and leaving them debating about their fate. So, like my country, I do not mess with my mother. See, her stare is like the presence of red top soldiers. It drains the life out of me before she says a word or two. My mother is a lot like my country. See, actually, my mother has taught extravagancy to this country. See, she can afford a watch of 1 million and forget that I need some things like cool shoes, like our beloved ministers that pocket the entire country budget at the expense of our crippled economy and dying facilities. My country is a lot like my mother, but I love my mother just like I do this country. I said, I love my mother just like I do this country. See, she is a twilight reflection like an intersect of dawn and dusk. Her voice is an orchestra. When she speaks, I want her to play me some more. Her tongue is an Eden of overflowing blessings. When she smiles, I could see the width of an ocean. See, guys, she could make a heart beat instead of a drum sound. So if I had to trade my mother for something with anything or anyone, see, I would trade her with none for nothing.
Whoa.
Oh.
Whoa.
Do you do this?
Yeah, we snap.
You
we
snap.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Snap, yeah.
Wow. Let me ask you a question. Has your mother had you perform that poem?
No.
Because if I was your mother, I would come and spank you a good one.
She hasn't. Actually, my sister told me, if my mother hears that poem, I will go without pocket money for the whole week.
Not even pocket money. She will tell you go look for that money that you want.
For that tuition.
Oh, congratulations. That's really good. Let me ask you, you've been there for 2 years. What does a practicing session or, you know, a session for you just to prepare yourself for a performance look like?
You see, when I write a poem, it's my poem, yeah? So I don't call it cramming. People call it cramming poems. We cram poems. We don't cram them. We master what we have written, yeah? So let me say, I'll do another poem, a love poem called Sasoma. I wrote this poem over the weekend, but I'm ready.
Oh.
Yeah, like I'm ready. It's a love poem. Yeah, so I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not cramming. mastering your piece.
Philip, are there
Yes.
poets who don't, necessarily write their own poems, but they perform something that has been written for them? Just like we have musicians
Yeah.
who sing, but it's songs that have not been written by them. Do we have such cases?
But the more frequent cases are the cases where poets steal from other poets. Like
Yeah.
somebody can listen to her
Yeah.
and actually steal that poem and take it as their own.
Yeah.
Still the
Yeah,
poet.
Yes.
and that's what's hurting the industry. Actually, you brought up another thing, and it's
Yeah.
it's affected us a lot.
Yeah, and basically, if I wrote my poem, like poets, we are insecure. Like, if you ask me, can I borrow your poem? I'll give it to you, but when you're going to recite it on stage, you're not going to give me credit. People are going to just snap and come and tell you, you have a nice poem.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, we had this Evoke show, and Luz recited a poem. And then someone goes and posts the same lines on Facebook, yeah, without giving him credit, yeah. And then he says, and then someone says, man, you have nice lines. He's like, I be like that. I was like,
Yeah.
you be like,
Yeah.
you be like a thief,
Yeah.
like,
Actually,
yeah.
on Facebook, that happened to me. Okay, not once, because some guy said, you know what, I really like your poetry, so the written stuff. So, could you send me some lines? So when I went to that guy's wall, I hope he's watching. But I won't mention who he is. Huh?
Yeah.
I went to his wall. All the poems I had ever posted, he had them as his own.
Without crediting you.
Nothing. In fact, he went to the extent that where he would ask me to, just send him stuff. He
Yeah.
became flagrant. So in the end, I was like, this guy is ridiculous. But okay, they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Yeah.
So I was flattered a bit that somebody would find it very important to steal my stuff. But after a while, it's theft, and you put in a lot of work.
That gets me to the next question.
Yeah.
That shows that you don't have clear-cut structures in the
No.
poetry industry.
No, we don't.
What would you attribute that to?
I would one, as you
Maybe
said.
we can start with
Yeah.
her. She's been there for 2 years and you've
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
it, or
Yeah.
for the 2 years at least.
Yeah.
What would you attribute it to?
I think we're redundant when getting copyrights, like
Yeah.
very redundant. Like if I'm a spoken word artist, I'm going to be like, when will I publish? I don't need copyright, yeah. So I think that affects us in the long run. Actually, it has affected us in the long run.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically, that's it mostly.
And what does it take to just go and get a copyright over your, articles?
That comes back to what he was talking about. You have to get a copyright. You have to pay for it. Yeah. Exactly. And
How
with-
much is
with
it?
the
Have you gone
pays-
to check?
I think around 300,000.
Oh.
Per poem.
No, just copyright. Like I have a
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a copyrighted poet. Let me say Mary Bird.
And that's a one-off payment.
Yes.
It's a worthy investment.
I think it is.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But-
remember, the poets don't earn all that much
Yeah.
money, because as we know, it's like the industry is still being nurtured alongside its creativity, but forgetting the financial aspect. Poets don't even earn; they earn a pittance. Like you go for a show, 30,000 is a standard payment for a poet. Some poets go to shows and earn nothing.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So the thing is this, one thing I've liked with going mainstream, with rock comedy and everything, we can talk about that later, is that we've got a chance now to break out of this financial misery and take the game to another level where poets can earn from their craft to the extent they can live off their craft.
Still back to me. Same question.
Yeah.
Why don't we have clear-cut structures like an association for
Yeah.
poets in the country?
Yeah, yeah.
We're coming up with it. Like I think Guitar Nation is trying to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, they call them the most expensive poets in the country, yeah, because they'll give you a check and are like, this is what we want. If you
Yeah.
want us, and
Yeah.
they do something that people like they add drums to it. They
Right.
do local poetry. They do Luganda poetry. They do poetry, like Luo poetry. So it's Luetry, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. Philip, what's your take? Why don't
Yeah.
we still have those? Well, she said that you're working on it, but working on it till when?
Yeah.
When do we expect? Now I'm a poet. You see, have structured that.
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, you have to-
I'll snap to
Yeah.
that. I'll
when
snap
you
to
Thank
that.
you.
work on it, when we're going to
So
work
when,
on it.
yeah.
today,
So when do we expect to see an association coming up for poets?
I think realistically, we were looking at towards November. There's something that's in the pipeline that we've been discussing with a number of people. And we want us to all come together, first as a loose association, but then later as a concrete association of individuals who need to front the interest of poetry
Yes.
in a realistic manner that can make us some money, you know.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you know, as much there was a poet called Charlatan, something like that. And now this guy was called, I think that's where the starving poet came from. This guy wrote brilliant poetry. It's a long time ago, like 1800s. He died
Yeah.
of starvation. Yeah. So I mean, really,
Imagine
people don't need
that.
to die. With all that creativity, people quote him today, you know, and we don't want to be like Van Gogh, the artist, who cut off
Yeah.
his ears because he couldn't earn a penny.
Yeah.
You know how much his paintings are worth today? $40 million. No one can, very few people can afford a Van Gogh painting, but the guy died penniless.
Let me ask you, Joanna, the industry is young. You can hardly earn a living out of it. You've been there for 2 years. What pushed you to it, knowing all those challenges that are there?
I realized, okay, much as it's not much, yeah, you actually earn. If like me, I'm a student, yeah, so I don't need that much money. If I come for a gig and then you pay me 80,000,
That's enough for you.
I'm like, oh, cool,
Yeah.
because my transport fee is like 20,000. I've saved 60.
that's
Yeah.
true, yeah.
If I come for a gig and then you pay me 100,000, I'm like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's what keeps me going. But for other people that take it as a living, maybe I'll take it on after when things go wrong in law school. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take it on. So let me say, at that time, like right now, I don't see the need of focusing, but with time, I'll have the need to focus.
Okay.
On, yeah, but then
Are your
I want
parents
to
in
start
support
now.
of that? Now that
Yeah.
you're in law school?
Oh yeah, they wanted me to change to mass comm, but I love the profession and I love like this is my calling. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
my
it.
calling. So
After school, you find yourself
I
dabbling
don't want
the
I
both.
don't want to do away with it. I don't want to do away with it. It has actually made me meet very many
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Remember last year's Commonwealth?
Yes.
I actually performed there, and then
Oh.
people were like
Oh.
shaking my hands,
I think
and
we
I was
could do
like,
that.
I was
Yeah.
like,
We're gonna we need to
yeah,
yeah,
yes,
we
now,
need to do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So with it, I meet very many people. So
Yeah.
basically, I'm very sure by the time I'm done with law school, I'll not be jobless as such.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
if law
Actually,
school becomes difficult, I've already set a path for
for poetry.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Oh, yeah.
Someone watching us today who wants to get into poetry, what's
Yeah.
the first step?
Joanna can go first, then I'll.
Poetry is a very easy industry to penetrate.
How?
You just meet me, yeah, meet me,
So
and
they
then
need to look for you.
No,
So
not-
when you're starting out, who did you look for?
Cool.
Yeah.
I didn't look for anyone. I heard of this group called Katochi Poets. Actually, it's actually currently not doing well. And I wanted to be the leader. So I was like, you guys, I have to head this group. That actually happened, like, let me say, 2016. So I was the leader. And thanks to my mentor, Bata. Then from there,
You had to get a mentor. Yes. Okay.
he tried to push
Yeah,
me. We had to do
Yes.
poetry sessions. So when the moment I put a show in theater, people came and they're like, "Wait, you're a poet?" "Yeah, I am." You're like, "Okay, get my number. I have a show coming up," something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the moment you just reach anyone, not me in particular,
Yeah.
Philip,
Yeah.
Peter Kagai, anyone.
So just
Jason.
look out for someone who is in the poetry industry, get a mentor, and get your work out there.
Yeah, but you need to be serious. Yeah.
Serious.
Like people inbox you, "Can I join poetry?" And I'm like, "Cool. We have this show. Like we have Ladu Slam every first Thursday of the month." I'm like, "Okay, there is this platform. You'll get a transport refund. If you have poetry, come and first see how it goes and all
Okay.
that."
Okay.
All right.
Actually,
Okay, Philip?
Yeah, like, yeah, that's another thing. Okay, let me start from the tail end of what you said. That's also another thing that people use to seduce a poet to perform for free.
Yeah.
A platform, right? They say
And
a
it's
platform.
not right. I
Yeah.
mean, that
So,
thing is
yeah,
old
yeah.
now.
So you like a
Yeah.
platform. So you do so many platforms. At the end of the day, I mean, a platform becomes your payment.
Like a platform
That's
poet.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
You're, exactly.
Yeah.
Now and then, okay, you were talking about
How-
now entering.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. You can do it through individuals. Like first of all, that's one method. Like Peter Kagai, she talked about. Mark Gordon is there. Myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jason Taro.
Yeah. Jason
And any
Taro.
other poet
Yeah,
you meet.
yeah.
Okay.
Then you can do it through institutions in the sense that, like right now, we're trying to institutionalize poetry in rock right there. Yeah. So you can approach those guys. We'll put you on a waiting list because there are actually other people who have approached.
Right.
You know, but we prefer people who don't want to start from the top. We want people who want to start from the bottom, in the sense that, you know, I mean, that's where it all begins.
Yeah.
That is actually the very seedbed. You know,
Okay.
as Drake said, started from the bottom, now we're here. You know, yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
We have a festival tomorrow.
Yeah,
Tell
we
us
have
more about
yeah,
it.
you have a book festival at Uganda Museum. You can get these books there. That will be from 3 p.m. That is. Don't go there at 3 a.m. That's why I'm just
3 p.m.
3 p.m.
yes.
right until around 7, 8 p.m. So a whole plethora of Ugandan books, all types. You can buy Ugandan authors.
Yeah.
Strictly Ugandan authors. You can have whether Timothy Wangusa, Professor,
Yeah.
Peter Kagai, you name them.
All
Anyone
right.
who has written
Okay.
is right there.
All right. As we come to a close, Joanna, Mary Bird,
Yes.
your last remarks.
And my last remarks. I want your character poets to keep going, because you don't begin something to just drop it, yeah? Yeah,
To keep going.
yeah, keep going. Like
Okay.
just push.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Philip.
Yeah. Actually, she said that very eloquently. What I would say is just to plug my events. I'm sorry about this. I know this is shameless, but I got to do it. Okay.
That's all right.
So we have on Tuesdays. If you're a poet out there and you're interested in poetry and you want to perform, come to Tuesday. Call me or come to Rock Garden. Come next to Speak Hotel.
Okay.
On Tuesday. Wednesday we're gonna do our whole thing. It's gonna be strictly poetry. So that will be your platform. Any poet out there.
Yeah.
Even yourself, because
Yeah,
we were snapping
you're-
for you earlier on. You're doing your thing. Yeah.
You had some lines,
You had
yeah?
something. You had something there.
I'm pathetic in poetry. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on the show.
Yeah.
So you have the information in case you want to get into the poetry space. We have Tuesday and Wednesday. He's mentioned the places that they will be at, so be sure to look out for that. My name is Malaki Villaodera. Morning at NTV still continues. Up next is Take Note.